I was talking to my friend the other day and I told her that one of my favorite childhood dishes was curry. I was, of course, talking about Japanese curry, the kind you make from cubes found at the Asian grocery store. But my friend thought my parents were making me what we know to be Indian curry. This momentary confusion had me wondering, how did curry get from India to Japan? This is the question I'll be exploring while I make kare raisu, or curry rice, Japan's beloved national dish. First, we'll need to cut our vegetables. Typically, carrots, onions, and potatoes are used, but like most stew dishes, the exact ingredients and measurements depend on your personal preference. Curry, with its roots in Indian cuisine, took very different paths in different parts of the world. In the US, it's often seen as a distinctly Indian dish, but in Japan, curry has transformed. It's been adapted, reimagined, and embraced so thoroughly that it's now considered a national staple. So how did this foreign flavor become so Japanese? It all began not with India, but with England. In the late 19th century, during the Meiji Restoration, Japan was opening its doors to Western influence. The earliest Japanese curry recipes didn't come from Indian chefs, but from British Navy cookbooks. The British had already created their own version of Indian curry, often thickened with flour and simplified with curry powder. When curry came to Japan, it was seen as a Western dish, part of yoshoku, a category of Western-inspired Japanese food. It was a dish for the elite, often served in high-end restaurants. The earliest known recipes of curry in Japan featured few ingredients, with a heavy emphasis on curry powder. The end result had a darker color and was saltier and spicier than the Japanese curry we know today. In fact, early versions of curry in Japan are more similar to what we know to be curry in the US. However, curry also appeared in the dining habits of the Japanese Imperial Navy. There's even a famous legend about a Japanese boy who snuck aboard a British Royal Navy ship, only to taste curry for the first time. Whether that story is true or not, what we do know is this. The Japanese Imperial Navy adopted British-style curry as a part of their official diet, not just because it tasted good, but because it was practical. At the time, sailors were suffering from beriberi, a disease caused by vitamin deficiency. When they switched to the British-style diet, which included curry, the cases dropped significantly. Curry became linked to health, strength, and modernity, and reflected broader Western influences on Japan by the West. There's another ingredient that tells us a lot about how curry helped change Japanese food culture: beef. Here, I'm cutting some sirloin steak tips into bite-sized pieces, but you can use a meat up to your choice. To really understand how beef curry became acceptable and even beloved in Japan, we need to go back over 1,000 years. For much of Japanese history, eating meat was considered taboo. Influenced by Buddhist teachings, the Japanese imperial court issued bans on the consumption of four-legged animals as early as the 7th century. Over time, these restrictions became part of the cultural norm. Meat eating was associated with impurity and was considered incompatible with spiritual cleanliness. While people in rural areas still hunted and occasionally ate wild animals like boar or deer, public meat consumption was rare and often hidden. For centuries, the Japanese diet centered around fish, vegetables, rice, and soy-based proteins. That all began to change during the Meiji Restoration in the late 1800s. As Japan sought to modernize and compete with the West, the government began encouraging meat consumption. In 1872, Emperor Meiji famously ate beef in public, a symbolic act that helped normalize meat eating across the country. The idea was simple but powerful. Western nations were strong and they ate meat. So if Japan wanted to become strong too, it had to embrace the same habits. Now, you should have your diced vegetables and meat ready. Place a pot of your choosing on a medium heat. You want a pot large enough to accommodate your ingredients with at least 1 inch or 2 of room at the top. Drizzle a generous amount of a neutral oil and let that heat up. Add your chopped ingredients. You should hear a sizzle as they hit the pan. Stirring occasionally, cook your vegetables until the onions start turning translucent. Then add your meat. Once the meat is browned on all sides, add enough water to cover your ingredients. In retrospect, I added a little too much water here, but you can cook it off as needed. Now, let your pot simmer for around 5 to 8 minutes to let your ingredients cook through. Today we'll be using Golden Curry, which is one of the most popular brands of curry roux cubes in Japan. In the 1960s, House Foods released Vermont curry, made with apple concentrate and honey to create a sweeter, milder flavor. Before this point, curry was still a heavily spiced dish and was widely regarded as unsuitable for children. This version was designed to appeal to kids, and it worked. Curry became a family meal beloved by children and nostalgic for adults. Now we can go ahead and add the curry cubes to our pot. If you're unsure about how much to add, start with a little and add more as needed. The curry should thicken up almost immediately, but if this isn't the case for you, you can let the pot simmer to cook out some of the water. As the name suggests, curry rice is curry served on top of a bed of rice. However, curry can be eaten on top of noodles like udon, as well as a sauce to many different dishes. Circling back to our original question of how curry became popularized in Japan, eventually becoming its national dish, it started with English influence, took hold through naval associations, and spread through innovation and convenience. Curry was a nourishing and adaptable meal, and over time it became uniquely Japanese. By the mid-20th century, curry rice had transformed from a symbol of modernization to a symbol of home. Curry became what's known in Japan as ofukuro no aji, which literally translates to mother's flavor. So today, when many Japanese people think of curry rice, they don't think of its English or Indian roots, they think of home. I hope you are able to follow along to this recipe and try this dish out on your own.